This is Abraham with North Shore Computer Services, and first things first, this computer is now working. It's doing some cleaning or whatever it's doing, but it's powering up and working properly. Why am I showing you this? Because it took me a while to figure out what the hell was wrong with this thing. This computer is a Dell Inspiron 2020 all-in-one. Fairly simple construction. You have a motherboard, so number of parts. Okay, you got motherboard, you got processor, you got fan, inverter, CD-ROM, hard drive, and LCD. There is really not that many. You also got the Wi-Fi controller on there. Not that many parts, so to speak. The problem with this computer was that nothing would show on the screen. And it wasn't clear if the computer was working or not because it's so quiet. It sounded like it was working, but the problem doesn't have an output. It would be nice if it had like a VGA or some kind of output where I can tap into the motherboard and confirm that the motherboard is operational. After looking at it for some time, I did find out that the motherboard was operational. How I found out? I got a different motherboard. With problems like this where computer isn't powering up and not that many parts, I mean, let's face it, fan is spinning, so that's not bad. CD-ROM has nothing to do with it. Hard drive really has nothing to do with backlight on the screen. I checked the screen. I actually took the LCD apart, and what I did was I shone my light through the screen. It wasn't easy to do it any other way. For some reason, shining the light from the front didn't show anything like I would normally do. So I tried all that. But when I shone the light through the matrix, I did see that the picture was there. So I had to narrow it down to the inverter, the backlight, LEDs themselves, or motherboard not sending the power to an inverter. After I took a close look at the inverter, I found that it has a fuse. There's a fuse on there. So I put my tester on it and it was blown. Good. I thought that the inverter fuse is blown. So I temporarily shorted the fuse and tried turning it on. There was no backlight. So I started looking for the power going to the inverter. There was no power going to the inverter. And looking at the board, took me a while to find that actually on the other side of the board there is another fuse. Let's see. So the fuse is right here with number 3, F9. So that took me a little bit to find. So I temporarily shorted the fuse, and lo and behold, the whole computer stopped working. And I was like, holy cow, I thought I fried the computer. I didn't. There is another protection in the power supply, so the power supply just cut the power off. I started looking and looking, and my first suspicion was that, I started testing and I found that there was a short on plus and minus on the inverter board. So inverter board was the one that was at fault all this time, but it also made the motherboard fail. So go figure, you got two fuses, one gets failed depending on the problem with the inverter. So at first I thought it was the voltage regulator. I tested it, it was short, but then anywhere I would look, everything was shorted. So I thought, let's not pull out the voltage regulator. And I found these two big capacitors sitting right on plus and minus input at the inverter board. So I thought those are easier to pull out. I did, and here is the culprit. This little tiny 10 microfarad capacitor is the one that brought down the whole computer. Blew 2 fuses and gave me a run for my money like you wouldn't believe. I could not understand why this thing wouldn't work, and primarily because the fuse was on the other side of the board. Well, hopefully this helps somebody determining why the computer, this particular computer, oh, there it is, it's powered up, doesn't want to work, and it could be that the inverter board is causing a lot of problems on this computer. The other thing that I discovered, and this is not the first thing that I discovered, was if you don't have your main fan, CPU fan plugged in to the board will not power up. You will see lights, but it will not kick in a gear. That is to protect the processor. I have seen this on other boards. Apparently this is something that is prevalent in the computers. It wasn't in older computers, but it is in the new computers. The reason I think that it took me a while to get this computer figured out is because of how Apple operates. On Apple, not having a backlight does not mean you have a bad inverter. What I've seen on Apple's was the LEDs themselves go bad. I've seen cables go bad. I've seen the inverter board not properly plugged into, on the Apple it goes into the power supply, so there are other things that cause the backlight not to power up. You can view some of my videos where I talk about that stuff. But on this particular computer, it ended up being quite, I wouldn't say simple repair. I did have to pull out the motherboard and replace the fuse. I did have to replace the fuse on the inverter, so 2 fuses and the capacitor, so 3 parts that needed to be replaced. I don't know what the total cost is on these parts. This one's probably, I don't know, 10 cents, and fuses maybe 15 cents, go figure. That's about it. Hopefully this helps somebody determine some issues with the Dell All-in-One 2020 Inspiron. And this probably, because it's a Dell, probably these problems would apply to other all-in-ones. Thank you for watching. If you like, give me a like, subscribe, enjoy, save money.